Hey, it's Mr. Hasquin, and I'm back with kind of a combo of things you should know just by being alive, or ask Mr. Hasquin a question day. You can ask me any question, and I'll answer it. All you have to do is raise your hand, and it's unique for me because one of my former teachers has reached out with a question. My teacher, Tom Slusser, Senor Slusser, was my high school Spanish teacher, and I also had him for this great history class. His team taught by him and Dr. Guthrie called Honors Seminar. Kind of started me down this path of studying history, but along Senor with his wife Jeannie, they work alongside a professional Thomas Jefferson historical interpreter at the Lewis and Clark site down near Wood River, Illinois, and he's asked me for my personal take on Thomas Jefferson as a person. And that's a complicated question. It's an essential question, so I think that the right thing to do is just to get into it. So the facts that I'm going to state here aren't going to be anything new to Senor. He's one of the more well-read and learned history guys that I've ever known. I also had the fortune of working with him as a colleague, too, before his retirement. But for everyone else, I can add a few things here. Thomas Jefferson is a giant in American history. He's the third president. He's the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. He was an ambassador to France. He was the mind behind the Louisiana Purchase, the founder of the University of Virginia. He was a lawyer. He was a philosopher, an architect, and an accomplished botanist. He was able to read in 7 different languages. He helped define the idea of what the American Republic could be. But we can't responsibly talk about Jefferson without facing the contradiction that defined his life. He was a man that wrote, "All men are created equal," while enslaving over 600 human beings, including Sally Hemings, with whom he had 6 children. She was his property from the age of 14. And that's not a footnote. That's a central truth. And while he did express discomfort for slavery in his writings, and he criticized the transatlantic slave trade in early drafts of the Declaration, his actions didn't match his words. Jefferson never took a political stand to abolish slavery, and he freed only a handful of people, mostly members of the Hemings family, upon his death. And it's not enough to say he was a man of his time, because there were others. Benjamin Lay, John Woolman, and even some founding fathers who did take steps towards abolition. Jefferson, with all his influence and all his intellect, didn't. And that decision echoes through the years. That's the complicated part. But if we do want to look at something more admirable about Jefferson, one of the more admirable aspects of his legacy, his belief in education as the foundation of a democratic society would be one of those more laudable characteristics. He once said, "If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and never will be." Jefferson saw public education as essential to preserving liberty. He didn't just talk about it, he designed an educational system. In Virginia, he proposed a tiered public school plan, elementary education for all free boys and girls, yes, both genders, and followed by a secondary and university level schooling for the most talented. His idea was to create an educated citizenry who could serve as a check on the government. And that vision led him to found the University of Virginia in 1819, which was his personal proudest achievement. So proud, in fact, that it's carved on his tombstone, instead of mentioning that he was President of the United States. UVA was revolutionary for its time. It had no religious affiliation. It emphasized the sciences and modern languages, and was designed as an academic village. Jefferson believed in the power of ideas and responsibility of citizens. Those responsibilities included being and remaining informed. He feared tyranny not just from kings, but from ignorance. And in that, I think he's as relevant today as he was in the 18th century. But something deeper about Jefferson could be his philosophical legacy. I mean, Jefferson's political philosophy was rooted in Enlightenment ideals, liberty, reason, the rights of man, and the social contract. And for the students who've been in my government class, the social contract is something I spend an awful lot of time on. Jefferson was deeply influenced by thinkers like Locke and Montesquieu and Rousseau. He believed in limited government, agrarianism, and a strict interpretation of the Constitution. The idea that government should only do what is explicitly allowed. And this really put him at odds with people like Alexander Hamilton, made more popular now in the Broadway production. Alexander Hamilton favored a strong central government with a more elastic view of federal power. Jefferson also had a very deep mistrust of concentrated power, whether in monarchies, banks, or even standing armies. He envisioned America as a nation of small, self-reliant farmers living off the land, participating in civic life, and keeping the government in check. I had a college professor who referred to that as Jeffersonian democracy. But again, Jefferson's vision was limited. The liberty he imagined often excluded women, indigenous people, and the enslaved. His idea of agrarian independence was built upon, quite literally, on the backs of enslaved laborers. Still, Jefferson's influence is baked into the DNA of American political thought. His emphasis on natural rights, civil liberties, the freedom of speech, and religion, and also the right to resist tyranny, shaped not only our founding documents, but also centuries of legal and political debate. So, how should we remember Thomas Jefferson? We shouldn't remember him not as a marble statue. We shouldn't remember him not as a villain, not as a saint. But I guess the more proper way to go about it would be, but we should remember him as brilliant and flawed and a deeply human figure, a man who gave the world some of its most powerful words on freedom and yet denied freedom to hundreds of people. He was a visionary of education and civic virtue, and he still made moral compromises for comfort, money, and power. And telling his full story doesn't diminish history. Those people that feel like, we're just attacking him for his flaws. It doesn't diminish it. It deepens history. And to Senor and Jeannie, who helped bring that story to life through living interpretation, thank you. You're doing great work. You're doing real work, because students don't need a filtered version of the past. They deserve the truth. Thoughtful, balanced, honest. And that's how we honor the people who built this country, by knowing them, not idolizing them, not erasing them, but by understanding. And, I'm super appreciative of the question, and I hope that I've come close to providing an answer that goes back to your comment and your answer. And it's very nice to hear from you, and I hope you appreciate what's happened here. Thank you so much for all you do.